Well, it's 10 a.m. on Tuesday, December 10th. I'm hereby call the regular meeting of the Finance Standing Committee of the CCSD Board of Directors to order. We have a quorum. We have a quorum of 4. One of our members, Karen Christman, is on an excused absence. I have a brief chair report, just to give people an update onto developments in the committee, on the committee front and other things. We're obviously approaching the end of the year, and on this committee, that means there's going to be a re-upping period, or people reapply. I think that's if Kaylee, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that is set in motion for this committee at the next board meeting, which is this Thursday, right? Yes. So that process will go forward. Now, I think, you have to reapply, but you don't, if you're already here and you already have an application on file, you don't have to, do a full resume or anything like that, but you do have to reapply. And of course, it's open to others who want to apply too. Now, there's a change in the works on the roster of committees, and you probably know something about that already, where the board is considering, well, actually the policy committee is actually folded. It's basically folded its tent. It's kind of done its work. The 4th slot is going to be filled with a committee which at this time, and we have the board has to sort of work out the details of it, is focused on fire protection, especially working with the fire department at the CSD fire department. We obviously don't want to duplicate the work of the Fire Safe Focus Group, but this has to deal with Cambria, CCSD specific issues having to do with enforcement of defensible space, fire evacuation, things like that, operational, public outreach, the fire department, what the fire department's needs are, all these issues that have to do with the budget, have to do with also it might draw upon the powers that we have to do certain things. That committee is not yet official, and it won't be formed until, I guess, February, if I'm wrong. In other words, there's 3 committees that are going to be up for reappointment now, and that's Finance, R&I, and Pros, the ones that exist. This 4th committee will be constituted after a separate motion by the board to basically write its bylaws and so forth, and that will be probably in January. So if you want to consider being on a committee, that's even not finance, that's an option if you want to do that. Finance will continue, I think, meeting on, and I mentioned this last month, the new schedule. I think they're on for the Monday after the board meeting, the monthly board meeting at 10 a.m. Which I think hopefully all the members of this committee who want to stay on will find that convenient. I think we went through that already. There are 2 days of the year where we have to meet on a Tuesday, but it has to meet on a Tuesday, which is after the President's Day holiday and the Columbus Day holiday, but otherwise it's Monday. And it's not final yet in terms of my future, but the board will be considering appointments to committees, finance, to chairmanships of committees this week. And I'm anticipating that I will probably be going to that new committee, and another board member will be taking over at finance. It may not happen, but it's in the works, and we've discussed it. So you may have a new chairman if you want to stay on. The chairman will be a very competent board member. So I can assure you that we won't put this committee in the hands of anybody who can't handle it. So, but if that happens, I'll obviously I'll let you I'll say goodbye in a more appropriate way to you when it comes. Hey, how you doing? Yeah. We should note also, I think on the 2 people in attendance for the purposes of the minutes, we have 2 fire department people. We have Michael Castellanos and Kayla Graves, yeah. And online,
We just have Matthew.
Matthew's online, okay. Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you for coming.
Thanks for
We have an audience here.
Mhm.
So that's basically my chair report. Have any questions about what's coming up?
So, two things.
Yeah.
One, when reapply by, is
Yeah.
that date set yet?
Haley, it would be, it's in the agenda, right? What would be the deadline date for reapplying?
Historically, the board has accepted applications up until the January 9th
Yeah.
board meeting. So technically, they could come in and.
Anytime until the
Yeah.
January 9th.
Yeah.
From the time they direct me this Thursday till January 9th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
You can, yeah.
Second, just FYI, I will not be reapplying for this committee.
And yeah, you mentioned that to me before. Sad to see you go. Are you going anywhere else?
Oh, I can imagine.
Likely I will be required for fire protection,
Yeah, and that would be an appropriate job for,
So,
if it happens.
yeah, but it happens, because part of that committee is the need for, one thing we see already is some, strong link with Fire Safe Focus Group, so that we're obviously complementing each other and not getting in each other's way, which is, one of the big things we want to avoid, but want to have a synergistic relationship with that, obviously the Fire Safe Focus Group, that would be very happy to do that, so. Yeah, that'd be good move for you to do, Cheryl.
Fire Focus Safety Group is based a lot with CAL FIRE.
Well,
And how are you gonna marry the two?
well, this is kind of what we're trying to do a little bit, because this Fire Safe Focus Group, and Dave can explain this, maybe better than I can. They are an adjunct of the Fire Safe Council, which is a countywide organization. It's actually a 501(c)(3). It's not actually the government, but they're a countywide group, which is under its auspices of a state program of Fire Safe Councils. And they are, yes, they work with Caltrans, Cal Fire County. I think the great strength is their ability to get grants. They're a grant seeking agency and they're quite successful at it. And they deal with wildfire, almost exclusively with wildfire protection, rather than operations, and operational issues at the fire departments. It's more, there's a lot of the forest grants. The forest grants have gone through them. And from Dan Turner, who's the executive. And
Great.
our fire department, of course, is a bunch of things, but locally, they're the fire protection agency here. Fire suppression, but also protection, also prevention, having to do with wildfire issues, but more things like defensible space, enforcement, evacuation, planning, things like that, that are very specific to Cambria. They're in Cambria's CCSD fire bailiwick, and we have to get everybody coordinated.
So would Michael Berkey chair that, or are you gonna chair it, Tom?
Well, we'll see. There'll be a chair from the board.
Yeah.
And obviously Chief Berkey is gonna be very, he will be, as Denise is the, staff liaison, he'll be the staff liaison, to the committee. And I think that's, if it's going the way if it's finalized the way it's headed, he'll be the staff liaison.
Okay.
Everything's still it's not finalized yet, though. The bylaws have to be rewritten, to define the mission. And, precisely of this committee, it's advisory committee, of course. It'll be the same structure with 5 members, 5 public members, a non-voting chair, and a staff liaison. Same structure. So, but its mission has to be defined more precisely. And that comes up next meeting, or not this meeting. Any questions? Okay, we'll move on to ad hoc committee reports. I don't believe there are any because that are separate in this category unless because obviously the overhead allocation committee their work is going to be discussed. So if I could set that aside. Ms. Fritz, do you have any report, or Scott or Keith have any report from the long-term financial planning? Effort? Okay, that's on hold. Any committee member communication? Brief comments on your activities that are relevant to this committee. Any questions, short, brief questions? Yeah, seeing none. Move on to public comment, which is on any issue that's before this finance committee. It's in our purview, but is not on the agenda. This is a regular meeting, so it's not on the agenda today. Anybody here from the fire department or anybody here online, anybody, I guess it's just Matt, right?
Yeah.
Okay, want to comment? I see no, nobody wanting to public comment on an issue that's in our purview. I'll move on to the minutes. Consent agenda, specifically consideration to approve the October 22nd, 2024 regular meeting minutes. Any corrections or additions you want to make in the minutes? I have one, I found, oh, actually Karen found one. I showed it to me. Yeah, she went over them very carefully. We had a discussion, okay, well, my correction, which should be noted, is on, under 4B, that paragraph under 4B, discussion consideration proposed funding framework for skate park maintenance. In the third sentence, yeah, the extra zero should be added to the budget of 5,000 per year. And that's the one. Also, we had a discussion, Karen and I had a little online discussion about the punctuation for Veterans Hall. And if we're gonna be really official, there's a couple references to it in the future agenda items, which have it apostrophe S. And our official version, I think, is S apostrophe, just to be really, really picky. She was wondering about the possessive, and I was saying that it's, in a sense, it is the Veterans Hall, because the veterans through American Legion have sort of a official, you know, interest or kind of quasi ownership interest in the, like with the public. So it is kind of their hall, you know, it's possessive, but it's S apostrophe. So we, you know, this is the Karen discussion that Karen and I had. So, yeah.
And then I believe there's also, same thing earlier in that sentence, 1,000 has been truncated to.
Oh, yeah, the 1,000 pledge, you know. Okay. I don't see, I mean, if the veterans, reference the Veterans Hall with that apostrophe S, I think, I don't even see it changed, except it's a small thing, but it's how we say it on our website, the S apostrophe. So those are the changes I saw. And then I guess the two changes, the number changes and the veterans. Anybody else see anything they want to, correct? Call for a motion and a vote.
I move that we accept the minutes as modified by Chairman.
In our discussion, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Let's move to second, and then I guess technically a move to second that the consent agenda be adopted, be approved, i.e. the minutes, by member, member person, seconded by member Hendrickson. I'll call for a roll call.
Yes.
McDowell, Mr. McCann,
Aye.
Mr. Hendrickson, Mr. Pearson.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. Next up, this is the product of, that sounds like a lot of work. And it's maybe I'll turn this over to either, Ms. Fritz might want to do it, or one of the committee members want to, Ms. Hendrickson or Mr. Pearson. Ms. Fritz?
Yeah.
Just give us a run on it. I'm looking at the page. I guess I'm looking at this page 6 of the minutes, which seems to have the meat.
I
The
see page
numbers.
5 of the agenda.
Yeah. I know,
The staff report.
Staff
Okay.
report, yeah, the staff report.
So
Go
the
ahead.
staff report 4A is discussion and consideration of the recommendation from ad hoc subcommittee on allocation of administrative expenses. So this is speaking about the overhead allocation for administrative expenses that is part of the budget policy. So we've kind of taken that out and been discussing it. And so, based upon our previous conversations, I was directed to somewhat develop an overhead allocation model that was based on effort. And then also, identifying certain direct expenses that could be taken out of the administrative section and allocated directly to the departments that used
Yeah.
that. Certain things are like specific legal fees, not a retainer from Mr. Carmel, but the other, you know, like our LCW, our HR lawyers, and some specific work, that Carmel and Natasha do for us that are not part of the retainer.
Mhm.
If we can identify what department they go to, we would direct expense those. Insurance costs that can be direct expense, such as certain property insurance as well as vehicle insurance. And personnel costs where appropriate. So that being in this model that you'll see on the next page, we have determined effort for some of our administrative staff based upon what they're doing, as well as I took our front desk position and I'm allocating it directly to water and wastewater. So I'm actually taking it out of the overhead allocation. He would be charged directly to water and wastewater,
Mhm.
since I think 100% of his time is due to utility billing,
Mhm.
for the most part. So, again, all those things are up for discussion. I was doing my own analysis of what I thought was appropriate. So this is by no means set in stone, and that's what you guys are here today, is to discuss all these things. Also, items for discussion will be the revenue collected from the agreement with Mission Country, which is our trash company. It is approximately around $200,000 annually, and, if we want to solidify through policy what we want to do with that money. Okay, so that's, if you look on the next page, this is the model. It's just a rough draft. And so I looked at 23, 24 administrative expenses and what it would look like if I made the changes that I'm suggesting to the policy. So administrative management, that top one, you can see I'm allocating things equally to most of the departments with a little bit of a reduction to F&R, assuming that the effort for F&R is a little bit less.
Mhm.
And those costs are the general manager, myself,
Mhm.
and, it's not written on there, but it's also the confidential admin assistant, board
Mhm.
secretary.
Yeah.
Is in that line. So, if you go down to, it says general ad, so please excuse me, I have some specificity in there, which would be in there, the green highlighted
Mhm.
lines. But I just did aggregate the amounts on one line for the ease of me just trying to get this done. So I have 661,000 total costs that I identified. And I just put a note on there that these costs are just, you know, our general costs for operations, but it is excluding those legal fees I mentioned that, you know, could be somewhere else. SDRMA has its own line, and that's excluding the property and auto, which would be billed directly to the department. So this is just everything
Mhm.
that's left over. And then, for procurement, that is our procurement analyst salary and benefits specifically.
Mhm.
And then you go down to personnel services. And so what that is basically my, admin tech 4 position. And she does payroll, she does payroll and she does utility billing. So you'll see that there's a stronger percentage of effort allocated to water, wastewater, and WRF, because a portion of her time is spent dealing with them. And so fire and F&R are just getting like the payroll percentage of time. So, and then you can see I have all the total costs allocated. I also have the old model comparison numbers, so you can see how it affects each department. You know, so fire is looking at a reduction of, you know, 27,000. And again, these are all draft numbers. So F&R went up a little bit, water and wastewater went down quite a bit, but they're also going to be getting a lot of direct expenditures that will be, you know, we're talking about moving a full position over to them, and so they'll be paying a lot more direct expenditures,
Mhm.
in insurance and legal fees and all of that. And this does not represent anything with the Mission Country
Yeah.
revenue,
Yeah,
amount in there.
Okay, so the biggest
Yeah.
effect I saw was the reduction in overall costs,
Mhm.
right?
Cause I'm taking a lot of expenses out,
That you're now
going to direct
Yeah.
expense.
She's gonna
Okay.
disperse it.
Mhm.
So the total administrative budget you don't see going down
No,
by
Right,
$4 million.
Mm-mm.
that was a question.
yeah, that was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
that
I'm
was a question.
sorry.
You think you had,
Yeah.
your explanation sort of answered, because I had that
Yes.
question too, like, big drop.
yeah.
But the money's still being, in other words, it'll be allocated, not so much it won't be overhead allocation, it will
No.
be direct, just
Mhm.
transfer those positions to
And the department would have to budget for
the
that then,
departments, yeah.
as line item budget, so will see their budgets go up for any, you know, direct expenditure that we feel like they're gonna
What
need.
about your auditor?
That is in just our general, so that will be shared based upon these percentages on the top.
Mhm. Let's see here. So and yeah, your personnel services, allocation. I guess I have to,
That's a position.
I say position, and then the percentages being,
Mhm.
you explained being different
Mhm,
from from the other allocation,
mhm.
model, or the other allocation area. Is it, how do you calculate that water, wastewater and WRF operating take that much more?
Well, because she
And the
doesn't,
personnel numbers aren't,
doesn't just do payroll, she
Oh,
does a
I see.
large part of utility billing still.
oh, okay.
A percentage of her time is utility billing,
Mhm.
so that's why their share of that position's money is
So,
more, is
okay.
because not all, it's like 35% of her time is spent.
Yeah, that's interesting because, yeah, in other words, it's not just personnel services.
Correct.
It's
She's-
the personnel services person or staff or
Yes, which
position
I can-
also does utility billing, okay.
And I will come up with new,
Uh-huh.
new descriptions. Like I said, this is a draft to try and get focus on, is this direction we want to go?
Mhm.
And then it'll be more detailed.
Okay,
Well, we know that Tim Carmel is not the only attorney for this district.
Correct.
right, we have,
So any of those other attorneys, we can usually say who they're doing work for.
Right.
Mhm. Like our HR attorneys,
Yes.
they're working on a specific issue for
Correct.
either, you know, union negotiations for,
Right.
or they're
Correct.
working, so we can charge that time directly
Mhm.
to
You
who
can
it needs to be
disperse it.
charged to, yeah.
Yeah.
And if it's an admin issue, it would go into admin and it would be dispersed out
Mhm.
through the overhead allocation.
Well, I mean, yeah, any more questions, because this is actually, I can see, this is impressive, obviously we gotta do,
Mhm.
there's more to do, and I'm, we have to take a look at this, the policy section,
Mhm. And
because it's gonna be
rewrite it.
totally different.
Mhm.
On that one paragraph, the one section on allocation is gonna have to be redone, but, I think this is, I mean, to me, it's more real. It's not, it's just doesn't, it's less arbitrary than what we had before. And I think that's what we're trying to achieve. I think it's something that's based on actual effort. I guess one question I have is this gonna be difficult to sustain, and maintain going forward, or we have a pretty good formula for every year when we do the budget, kind of plugging in, making sure it's sort of staying close to the actual.
You're talking about the
effort.
percentages?
Yeah,
With the effort, I mean, I would guess. When we're looking at the budget policy, is when we would look at the effort percentages again.
yeah.
So is this something you're gonna apply for the new fiscal year? Where are you going?
I mean, if it can get approved in time.
Yeah. Steps to approval are, I think, one more stop at the Finance Committee and then the board, would that means the board would approve it in February.
Mhm.
Close enough.
Yeah, I think I
I
could,
think, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
I have
but,
plenty of other budget items I can take care of.
well, your fiscal year is July,
Correct.
Yeah.
so.
But I'm going to be I start developing the budget in January
Yeah.
for the new fiscal
Yeah.
year.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Well, I'm kind of interested in hearing, like, yeah, the board members, the committee members rather, ideas on what we need to do, what needs to be done next, like, where do we go from here? I mean, obviously, the policy wording is one thing, but is there anything you want to see done to these formulas or, because from the committee, the ad hoc members, standpoint might be good to hear, but are we on the right track? And then I guess with a sense of how much more we have to do. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm real pleased with how it's looking. I think it's very defendable to anybody that wants to take a look at our underwear drawer and see how we're spending the money and how we're allocating the funds. I think you did a great job.
Thank you.
I think this looks really good.
So just in terms of, how it gets worded, summarizing, you just more accurately identified a lot of expenses that could be directly billed.
Yeah.
That were previously being allocated willy-nilly,
Yeah.
and this, I mean, not willy-nilly, but,
Yes,
but now you're really going through and figured out which ones can be put direct to the department that they
Correct.
originate from.
Mhm.
And I think
over-
that's actually the biggest change. That's the most significant
Yeah.
part of it, that is it
So Denise,
direct allocation.
when we see a credit card billing,
Mhm.
are you going to disperse it? I mean, I know it says certain departments, but are you going to break it down even more?
no, the
Okay.
credit cards already go to whoever is doing the expenditures.
Mhm.
If the admin department is doing an expenditure, let's say it's in the furniture category,
Mhm.
it would be under where this green highlighted area.
Mhm.
That would be then allocated out to these departments and the percentages you see on the top. Things like travel and training, that if that's on a credit card,
Mhm.
that again would fall under that section. So most of I would say all of admin's specific credit card charges are gonna fall in this green block right here. So yeah, to be allocated out to the departments.
I think it looks fine. I've gotten it down to two different breakdowns, really,
Yeah,
and instead of the funky things that we had before, so. Well done. Now,
So I think it's,
you need to. Somebody needs to rewrite that.
Mhm.
I was gonna say, I think if we think, I think if we think the numbers, if,
The numbers look fine.
the numbers look fine, all we have to do is the narrative, which is, explaining it, what's done, and then translating that into language or basically writing that section, I think it's, the budget policy, rewriting that in light of the explanation, basically how we do it with, just describe it and then it sounds like it would be actually less complicated because you don't have these extra band, you don't have these three categories and all that. It's a little less complicated in a way, explain, I think. And the key thing being, more direct allocation of certain expenses rather than the overhead, it's a general overhead.
Yeah.
So this is not a, I don't know if we have to take, I don't see it taking a vote to send anything yet to the
Do
board.
we
for
want to have a
recommendation.
discussion about the mission?
You guys have any?
Oh, Mission Country, did you have any comments? Yeah,
On
Oh, yeah.
this-
yeah, public comment, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
What is the M and R build and M and R students group?
Maintenance repair,
Maintenance and repair building.
Yeah.
Maintenance
For-
repair. So in the final one, we'll see a lot more line items, so it'll be more detailed. It's just different line items in our budget.
Like station repairs.
No, that would be fine. This is just admin expenditures.
Okay.
So yes, you have an M&R building in fire that you charge your stuff to. So this is just admin. So like something that's in M&R building is like our pest control.
Gotcha.
I mean,
Yeah.
So that's on top of the already administrative management.
let's see,
Well,
I'm just trying to figure out.
yeah, so in administrative management is salaries and wages for the general manager, myself, and the confidential admin assistant. And in this green box is basically our operating expenditures, which I've. For this presentation, I've just have it in a. One number, but it will be comprised of like travel and training, and then our,
Yeah.
basically supplies and services.
Perfect.
Our operating expenditures.
Yeah.
And then I kind of detailed out. Or I pulled out certain expenditures that we previously discharged to admin and we allocated out to the departments, no matter like who it was for. So like, that's what I was saying for legal fees.
Yeah.
If we're doing an HR matter for fire, that would be charged directly to fire now. It wouldn't be put in this
Right.
big pot and spread out to
Yeah.
everybody.
Absolutely.
And vice versa. If we're doing stuff for water, it'll be directly charged to water. And so then also insurance. So property and vehicle insurance will be directly to who used it. Our general liability insurance will be in the general pot and be spread.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
does SDRMA give you that breakout
Mhm,
for vehicle and everything?
mhm.
Yeah, they do. Good.
Yeah, so there's, when we finalize this, we'll have yeah, when it's finalized, then when it comes back for the final, look and everything, there'll be much more detail on the line items then, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's good. But it answers a lot of questions people would have about why things get allocated to certain.
Yeah, and
departments.
then the other thing is this plan is saying our front desk position would be charged directly to water and wastewater. That's another big change instead of, because he's 99 point, he takes calls on weed abatement, but then sends them to fire. So I would say there's a good, strong argument for his position directly to water and wastewater.
Good. So, I think the step forward is to bring this back, in the January meeting, finance committee meeting with, a fleshed out, chart of an explanation, a chart and an explainer. And, language in the, policy that obviously, fits what we're doing going forward, I think.
When Denise finishes that and has that ready, is that possible to see that before the January meeting so that we can provide input, so we can have resolution at the January meeting?
Well, you're on the subcommittee, so you guys
Oh,
can help me write,
yeah.
you can help me write the policy.
Okay, yeah.
That would be
Yeah,
helpful.
okay, good.
Andrew has- So yeah,
General Manager McElhenney.
Hi, I just wanted to follow up. I know Denise was talking about the franchise fees, and I just wanted to chime in and say that, her and I have been talking about those, and typically those, depending on the year, would be routed into the general fund reserves. And so as we all know, the Facilities and Resources Department has been struggling over the last few years, especially with resources and the ability. I know some of the discussion today may be on the Vets Hall CIP list. So
Right.
her and I discussed about routing those franchise fees, in which the future of franchise fees are in question legally. More to come on that in the future. There's some case law coming out, but we'll be using some of those franchise fees and redirecting them into the Facilities and Resources Department in the next fiscal year.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. It's good to put them in reserves because what General Manager McElhenney is talking about, there are legal challenges to these franchise fees. Even though these fees have been around for a long time, it has to do with special districts, as I understand it. Cities which have responsibility for streets have been able to justify the franchise fees as basically compensation for the wear and tear on the streets that the garbage trucks create. We don't have that argument, and apparently there are live court cases, at least one that is challenging that. We had a discussion with Tim Carmel about this, I think, at a gender review. And so we have to plan for a future in which we don't get those, just in case. Worst case, we don't get those fees. And it's why putting them in reserves, not in other words, locking them into ongoing spending, but putting them into reserves is the smart, it seems like be the most prudent thing to do. Now, Matt, Mr. McElhenney, is that pretty accurate?
Very, very accurate. Yes, and we
Yeah.
traditionally have put them in reserves.
Yeah.
But you know, Denise and I's thought is because FNR in a deficit for so long, we've done a pretty good job in this last fiscal year, bringing us back into the black. But there are some upcoming expenses that eventually will have to be addressed with our vets hall and other district facilities that we thought we would start actually using some of those monies towards district operations.
Okay, good.
That opens up a Pandora's box, doesn't it?
What's the magnitude
What?
of these fees? You know?
Or
Oh, they're
approximately
Well,
200.
around 200 or so, yeah, 200,000.
What is the projection for with this rate increase? Do you have
I
it?
don't have that.
You do not have it?
What,
A
how it will,
projection- A
no,
projected amount of money, you're at 200,000.
so
so-
what I do is in January, when I start working on the budget, I reach out to Mission Country and ask them for their estimate of what our
So the,
money will be, and they provide me what they feel that.
so we don't
will
have,
be
we don't have a figure now.
Not for
It
next
wouldn't,
year,
no,
no.
it wouldn't be too different. It would be slightly more. But it wouldn't be a
Slightly?
big increase. No, it wouldn't be a lot. It's around, I mean, it was a little under 200, it might be, it wobbles a little bit, but it's not, we can't expect any big change in it. It's gonna be a pretty roughly the same.
What it, for the last 3 years, when we've had rate increases,
Mhm.
has it been 20,000, 30,000?
I mean, I don't have that, those, not
You
how
do not
much it
have-
went up in front of me. I could
Oh,
pull them. I
okay.
just don't have them in front of me right
And some
now.
of that money, of course, goes back to a rebate that the qualified customers get. They actually get the rebate, I think, from Mission Country, but we pay for it out of a slice of the franchise fees we get for the people who all qualify for the PG&E low income
The
program.
care program?
The care program, yeah. So and that will continue. But yeah, it's not a large, it's not a big part of the general fund and I think it would not be smart at this point to lock it into new spending. You know, I'm gonna keep it in reserves for, one-time use essentially.
Well, I'm not
Correct.
sure I understand why it's going in FNR. I mean, I know FNR needs the money, but other than that, why it wouldn't go into admin reserves and then be dispersed equally amongst all the,
Well-
or maybe between fire and FNR? Because really, the enterprise funds are separate and
Right.
they're funded fully by the rates, okay? But the revenue that comes in to handle fire and FNR, right, is the property tax. We also put the rent that we get from Vets Hall
Mhm.
into that, and so the disbursement and allocation of the revenues are just as important as, the allocation of the overhead, I think.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if, we're stealing money from fire because FNR needs the
Well,
money.
and it depends on how we decide to address it. So if we say we're gonna put those franchise fees and, not really budget them, we're gonna put them in our reserves, then fire or FNR have the ability through the budget process or through request from the board to request to use reserves for whatever they want to use it for. So I would say it would be up for grabs between both of them based upon our current way that we handle it. Or I don't know, every year if we're gonna try and spend that money on some of the deferred maintenance that we're seeing in both areas, like we emergency, meaning not budgeted, just
Yeah.
fix the roof and the
Fire department roof, yeah.
the fire department roof and gutters. So that will ultimately come out of reserves. So if that money was put in reserve, so who it's going to would be based upon the
Right,
request
so
for
there's
reserve
no
expenditures.
Reserves designated for FNR and for fire,
No.
there's just a general,
Correct.
right,
There's
okay.
no earmarking.
Okay,
It's
so
all-
that just goes
Yeah.
into general then. like
Right,
you
it's
said,
strictly
whoever
us.
needs it.
Whoever
Yeah.
requests it. Matt, I don't know if you have a different viewpoint on how we would use that money each year.
I mean,
Or-
ultimately, this is something that could be a board discussion. You know, I look at it as we kind of have a failing business model with our facilities and resources department in terms of what it needs to do just to stay afloat. So if you all are actually sitting in a prime example of it. If you look above your heads, you're going to see a roof and a ceiling that's falling apart. To the back near that sliding glass door, you'll see rotted floors. And at some point, it has to be addressed. Now, whether we put those franchise fees in the reserves and then make a budget adjustment to repair the vets hall, that could be done just as easily if we don't want to allocate those monies to F&R. My thought is that we have a small window with those franchise fees potentially before they go away to affect some change in the vets hall and some of our failing infrastructure as far as facilities and resources. But again, we can have a board discussion about it and where those fees should go. I just feel that the more that we fail to address some of our facilities and resources infrastructure needs, the worse it's going to get. And one way or another, it's going to come out of those general fund reserves unless we want the vets hall to fall apart.
Scott,
It's hard to say, there's no anticipation there'd be a clawback on this money, just
I
a
would-
cessation.
I would doubt it. I mean, yeah, I mean, it doesn't usually happen that way. I hope not.
Yeah.
That would be scary.
That would be, yeah, I don't see any reason for
Okay.
that, but, yeah, and it may not happen for a couple of years. I mean, it may not, there's a chance, this is worst casing it, because there's a chance that the special district may win the case, because it's so established or whatever, but I think we're talking about like two things here. We're talking about a budgeting question about what to do with general funds in this coming year. How much of the general funds go to F&R, how much go to fire? Which is always an issue, always a question to answer. And the other question is, what do we do with the franchise fees and how do we classify them? I think the simple answer with the franchise fees, which is, I think is what we were talking about today, is we classify them as uncommitted general funds, uncommitted reserves, and just leave it at that. And then we take up this issue of how much does F&R get, how much does fire get in connection with the budget? Because that's a budget question. That's, you know, what 2025, 26 budget, what it'll have from those things. That's for, that's kind of coming up. That's not what we're talking about today, I don't think.
I don't agree, Tom.
Well,
That's my opinion.
well, explain it.
Well, I don't agree. I mean, you have these funds that are coming in, you have property taxes that are coming in, and you have to allocate it somewhere. And if you know that there's a legal problem down the road, then those funds should be put in reserve because they may be
No.
pulled from you.
Well, that's what we're doing.
That's what he
That's what
said.
we're talking
Yeah,
about. That's what we're talking about.
But not uncommitted. I
Well, yeah,
mean, if the fire department needs something, they have the right to go into those funds.
Yes, that's what we're
And that
That's what we're
should,
saying. Maybe, but
you should build,
to request them, yeah.
yeah, that money should be set aside.
it's available for whatever the needs are.
But if-
So it's not like allocated to something upfront.
But if you have litigation and they say you're gonna pay back X amount of dollars over 10 years of these funds, we're screwed.
Well, I don't think that's,
Well,
we don't
we
have
don't
our
think-
lawyers, we don't have Tim Hill. I don't
Well,
think that's a likely
anything's
possibility.
possible.
Well, I never
I'm
heard of that
sorry.
actually being done. I mean,
But
in
it
cases
doesn't
like
mean
this,
it can't.
it just stops it, but I haven't heard anything to, yeah.
It's like likelihoods.
Clawback means usually when you've done something really, illegal and, wrong or whatever, it's different. Clawbacks are much,
That's my opinion.
yeah.
Everything
I mean,
we've done with the franchise fees is been legal and vetted. And
Right.
much like other special districts across the state, this has
Yeah.
been done. This is not something that we're doing as the Cambria Community Service District that is out of line. Now, if
Yeah.
case law comes down and changes how franchise fees are allocated, or if they go away, then that would be moving forward. But we're not looking at retroactively, taking some legal hit for using the franchise fees the way that they are classified as legal today. So I would not be
Yeah.
concerned with that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's a good point. So on the issue, I guess on that issue of the franchise fees, I think the consensus, sounds like the consensus here is we leave them in unrestricted, uncommitted reserves for whatever future needs are in the general fund. treat them like property tax, basically. If any has, I don't think we need to take a vote on that, but it's,
Yeah.
it's a consensus of the group.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, the board makes the ultimate decision in every budget, exactly how to allocate them. Will come up.
Like the property taxes percentages of which goes where. and
Exactly, and it's always,
It's all in the budget.
yeah, exactly.
Which will come before this committee
Yeah.
before it goes to the board.
So, and again, I guess I'll make this I think that our official action is to continue this item to the next, meeting of the.
So you want to see a more detailed,
A detailed,
finalized version of
Final
this, as
version.
well as an update to the policy
exactly. So I think we're very much on the right track,
for the January meeting.
if that's possible. Comes,
Is it due tomorrow?
the January meeting is gonna be, it's the Monday after the 9th, so it's
No,
gonna
for
be
January.
10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, January 13th, finance, yeah.
January 13th,
Yeah.
okay, so it will be due very quickly,
Right before Christmas, yeah.
Christmas Day.
I mean, I think,
That's some of our deadlines for Christmas Day.
really?
They don't like my deadline.
Yeah.
Hey, Bob Cratchit.
Haley,
It's gotta work.
So, thank you, guys. Denise, it was, I think you guys, and you and your committee did a great job with this. I mean, that's what we're
So I
trying to
will
do.
probably tap you guys for
Yeah.
help with the policy, so I'll send out emails and we
Yeah.
can probably do it and maybe do Zoom with me too. But that would be helpful for me to get your guys.
We're
insight on that.
happy to help.
It's because you're kind of on a tight schedule, actually, because you kind of want to get this stuff in before,
No, I really will have a deadline to get it all to Haley, so.
yeah, so.
They'll tell
before
me what that
Christmas,
is,
basically.
and then we'll just,
Yeah.
I mean,
Get
it's
that
not-
big
yeah,
gap of
yeah.
when nobody's working. Okay. So, but yeah, unless there's any more questions or discussion, I'd like to move on to the item 4B, which is Mr. Pearson asked for this topic to be brought up, and so in response, you might want to talk a little bit about it, but in response to, we just pulled the current CIP list section with the Vets Hall items on it. As what, and then nothing, of course, obviously, nothing's been spent, nothing's been done on it. They're all number 3 priorities, so they're, stuff that's not expected, wasn't expected to be
Not
done imminent, yeah, in the next year or two. So the question is, and I guess, I could address this sort of either to Ms. Fritz or to Mr. McElhenney. What needs to be done with these numbers? Because they're very old numbers. They've been there for quite a while. And some-
Yes.
and extremely round numbers too.
Yes, David and I are working together. We actually have another meeting today at 1 o'clock, and we'll be going through those numbers. He'll work on getting some rough estimates for us. And probably in the January Finance Committee meeting, I should have an updated CIP list for you.
Okay. Anybody have any questions of either Mr. McElhenney or Ms. Fritz?
Just in general type of questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Because I don't know anything at all, about the vet center. I wasn't a vet, so I didn't go to Canada, but I was not interested in Vietnam either. The, who actually owns the vet center? Who is?
CSD.
CCSD.
CSD does. So,
And the county gave it to us.
okay, and at the same time, they
The
built.
Netherlands.
Yes.
The old county,
They
the old
built the
county.
Jocelyn Center.
Oh, that's a private, well, the Jocelyn Center's private, they're on county land, they rent county land, but it's a private 501c3,
Okay,
private organization.
okay, so going forward, what is the intent of the vet zone? What are we trying to accomplish? We just trying to keep the lights on, or are we do we wanna, cause I have a whole bunch of questions relative to that. So that's kind of part of it. And then who actually manages any kind of a marketing plan for it? Like I recently attended, our neighbor was a Whitler, and we came in, Maria bought a bird for a friend for birthday. Anyway, so we see those kinds of things going on, but I don't know how people find the person to talk to. to ask them?
Well, it's all on our website. So if you know, if people wanna, they
Yeah.
submit a request through their website and it's probably more word of
Portal.
mouth that it's available for use. We don't do any marketing.
No, okay.
And that's just some, that's
But there is a contract.
Yes, there is a contract and we have a process, which I could detail out. for
There's a
you.
rental agreement.
But,
Okay,
mhm.
all right.
So we do have a process and our inquiries usually come through the website, and then it goes from there.
It's, we don't have active, we're not actively marketing it, which is, this, Dave can talk to this too. We had a ad hoc committee active 2 years ago, I guess it was now, trying to figure out alternative ways to fund improvements, updates, repairs to the Vets Hall. And at the same time, get more business in, get more use of it, community use. It's sort of, it's not, the effort's not dead, but we realized it was not easy to just get a citizen, 501c3 going. You had to have, it wasn't quite enough enthusiasm out there, whatever you want to call it, to do something like that, to fund it. We did identify some of the needs, obviously, and they're still there. We looked at updating the fee schedule, and to some degree you can, but you don't want to, we are competing with like the Jocelyn Center for groups. So we can't like price ourselves out of the market. It is a conundrum because we don't really have a funding source for the Vets Hall specifically. It has to come out of F&R, essentially. Until we,
It ends up coming out of property tax.
Yes.
it comes out of the same thing, everything else comes out, all the other general fund stuff comes out of. So we don't really have a stream. I think we get about, I'm trying the numbers were, and it's our revenue, the rent revenue we get is stated every year in the budget, but it's in the order of like 20,000. Like that, not much. And the maintenance costs are, probably more than that when you take staff time.
Yes.
We're probably running it's a deficit.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, quite a deficit,
I'd
yeah.
say a considerable
Yeah.
deficit.
Yes.
So
So
you're
that's an operating
including
debt.
farmer's market in this?
Yes.
Yeah, include them in the revenue, yeah. And they, of course, they create some, maintenance needs too, because
Yeah,
they
they do.
use the barbecue and the
John,
restrooms and yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the story on it. And it's something we've struggled with. It's one of those areas where it's why F&R, when Mr. McElhenney says F&R is, not really a great business model, not viable, is you have to include the Vets Hall, Veterans Hall in that. It's stuff that they look after, that they maintain. One of their big tasks, and then one of the big expensive tasks, and they don't have the money to do it. We don't have the money to do everything. So
And
this
there's
is why-
multiple,
Yeah.
sorry, and there's
Go ahead,
multiple, yeah, there's multiple things that we've done historically that David, myself, Denise, Miriam have been sort of fixing along the way. I'm not proud to say, even though it wasn't my doing, is that if you were to go back 5, 6, 7, 8 years and look at the amount of fees that we've waived for various community groups, which is generous on behalf of the CCSD, but we're talking thousands and thousands of dollars that have been waived for 501c3s, community groups for the use of the Vets Hall. And we're kind of feeling that a decade later. So we've started to stop that process of waiving fees
Mhm.
for the use of the Vets Hall. If that kitchen right next to you is dilapidated and, isn't all that useful for some groups that want to do larger parties and events. So there's things that, we need to do to the Vets Hall to make it marketable, which, as stated, we don't do much marketing with the Vets Hall. And that's
Mhm.
part of the reason, is that it's not all that marketable outside of just the space itself. But we have talked about perhaps doing a better job on the website and doing some type of a video tour to attract having it rented a bit more. But we are competing with the Jocelyn Center. So as these upgrades to the Vets Hall happen, so do the costs increase for renting it. So it's a bit of a catch-22.
You picked up the other three questions I had, so.
Which are,
Yeah. So the intent though, as far as the structure goes, is to keep it. I mean,
oh, I think we, yeah, we don't.
know if we have a choice.
okay.
So,
Can we abandon it? No.
no, I mean, it is a very important, it's very important to the community and people do use it. I mean, it's not
It's
a,
rented almost every weekend.
yeah, it is
It's
used a
not
lot.
that it's, yeah.
So sometimes for commercial, like for little exhibitions and stuff, and a lot of, there's things like parties and,
Car
quinceañeras and
Mhm.
car shows and stuff. Yeah, a lot of groups use it.
A lot of
Individuals,
families
families, yeah.
use it for.
Dorado has their.
Dorado has
holidays
their-
every
yeah,
year that
yeah.
they put on the stage and then.
Yeah,
Okay, well, I just had to ask the question. Maria said I would make no friends asking it, but I.
it's
I had to
just,
ask the
it's
question.
used and it's.
Well, and it's used for our board meeting. So I mean, if we
Yeah.
didn't have this, we would have to come up with an
Yeah,
alternative.
and here we are now. I mean, we don't have conference space.
So are the
It-
fees waived for American Legion?
Well, they pay their own.
Oh, they pay it all,
They
don't
pay their own rent. You pay like,
The American Legion?
you pay like
We pay $2,000
$2,000 a year, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
that's one thing that was initiated a
for
couple of years ago.
upstairs and downstairs. Well, we
Yes.
have, when the,
Yeah, downstairs is pretty much club and everything
Yes.
that they built.
Yeah.
Long ago,
yes,
so they really don't pay any rent for that, because they keep that, they do the upkeep on that.
Yes.
Yeah.
themselves,
so,
This
and
is
they
for
pay
like,
the utilities for that themselves. And then upstairs, the $2,000 is for the meetings and all upstairs.
yes.
Yeah.
That is
There
there.
are twice a month, we have meetings
Yeah.
here.
Is there lights out here too that go on at night? Is this place
Yeah.
lit up at night?
Yeah.
so,
Some of those lights are on the Legion's meter and some of them are on.
yeah.
And, you know, my thing about the CIP list
Yeah.
in particular, and it's great that there's gonna be updated numbers, but if we can't feasibly do them, they're gonna be obsolete as well, because, you know, if we can't do them for 5 years, the numbers obviously change. And I think what the general manager and I have been discussing with the Mission Country fees is like, could we get some low hanging fruit as far as some of these items on the CIP list and allocate that money towards this to get, you know, some of those things that might be safety hazards or might come and become an emergency type of thing, with some of the updated numbers that David is creating for these specific line items on the CIP
Yes,
list.
the water line has been an issue here for years,
Which.
the water line.
Where the drain is this,
Well, I got mostly fixed.
Oh, is it fixed now?
Well, a lot of it was renewed and replaced.
I know Ben, the
There was an
plumber-
When
emergency
they-
last
when they
month,
did
yeah.
this,
Yeah,
they have to go out on Main Street there. They did get quite a bit of that renewed, so I think a lot of that got taken care of. The the issue with upgrading the whole thing, okay, to an emergency
oh, yeah.
center.
Yeah.
Which was my idea, is to, a way to go get grants. You know, if you went that direction, you could get grants more easily than if you're just trying to make it pretty, right? The other is Cayucos just got a lot of money to do theirs, and change theirs into an art gallery, okay? Because they don't have the events, organization there or anything like that. But the problem with the emergency is that this is not an earthquake.
Flood zone, isn't it, Denise? Isn't this a flood zone?
the flood zone, but I think the earthquake thing is my more,
Upstairs,
Sorry.
was ever flooded, it's only downstairs.
Yeah. but the earthquake, it's not a rated,
Yeah,
it's not rated.
for earthquake.
The whole Main Street flooded.
Yeah, but I think, yeah, I mean, David's been trying to get, those grants,
Yeah, we tried
angling for those
couple
quite a
grants.
bit, actually.
If we said that we were going to make this an emergency shelter,
Yeah.
et cetera, for whatever, for any kind of hazard, okay, tsunami, earthquake, wildfire, whatever, if we would do that, we'd have to get a consultant to tell us how much that would cost. It's
Mhm.
probably several $1,000,000, but that would be a grantable upgrade.
Yeah.
Just getting the stuff that you've got on this list done is probably not a grantable upgrade.
Mhm.
Okay, I mean, you're gonna have a harder time giving a grant. Again, skate park people did a wonderful job of getting that grant for that. That same organization that they went through for that could be an organization to go through. I know that the general manager and the staff is looking more and more at getting grants and everything like that, so I'm sure that's one of the avenues they're looking at to upgrade this facility without going full blown. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing that we could touch on, just to circle back on what Denise said, is some of these, again, board decision, finance committee recommendation, what we want to do with those franchise fees. But when we look potentially on return on investment, that's hall is incredibly inefficient when it comes to heating, cooling, everything. So the heater on the wall behind you goes right up into the vents, right out the roof, so we spend an incredible amount of money in heating and electricity on a vets hall that's not very efficient in terms of insulation, windows, so there are some things that potentially the ROI on it might be worth it to invest a little bit of money in some of those upgrades that again could make that place a little more marketable. We also don't, I would say some of the fees that we take in for renting the vets hall don't necessarily pencil out all the time. So we're doing that with some of our fee updates, so that's something to think about as well.
I had one suggestion to make on the CIP list itself. I think it's in addition to coming up with new numbers for the project estimate, examining how you might want to prioritize these up projects, which ones might be more, more near term than others. Because they're all number threes now. They're all in the out there category. Which ones would it make sense from an ROI standpoint, and also from a potential revenue generating standpoint to do first?
Well, as a safety, there might be some
And
better
safety,
right?
which, yeah, but if you have efficiency, electrical efficiency and heating efficiency and stuff like that, you might want to do those up front. So it sounds like you might want to add, do you think we would be adding some projects to this list too?
I think there's a
Well, we don't
potential
have
for that.
We
Yeah.
don't have lighting upgrade on this list at all.
Right, I'm just saying,
That payback would probably be less than 3 years.
Yeah, 'cause you're-
Mm.
Yeah. I don't know what kind of lights these are.
Having done millions and millions of dollars of those.
Yeah.
By previous.
Well, I mean, I
lights.
think it would be beneficial if you guys had a brainstorm of like projects that aren't on this list, we could write them down.
Well, the heating and air conditioning, of course, Dave knows something about that. The heating and air conditioning, or like just heating system. I mean, if it's,
Yeah, there's no air conditioning in this building.
I'm just saying,
That's
yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
I don't think it needs
it doesn't need it, no,
You
it's just
have
Cambria.
an
I'm just-
asbestos ceiling
I'm just
probably
saying that the
there,
forced air heating
all of the above.
system is probably, as Matt's saying, is probably very out of date in terms of efficiency.
Yeah.
And it is very costly. Costing us a lot of electricity and gas, and so
We get really cold.
and that's something that, again, that's not on the list of Vets Hall work. Yeah.
I've worked for one for 14 years.
The lighting,
I mean, if you want to speak of the efficiencies, probably the windows. I mean, doesn't that matter? When you're talking about,
Windows are very expensive,
well,
so you
that's
gotta
why
be
it's,
careful there.
yeah.
The payback on windows is generally more than 20 years,
Condensation.
so I wouldn't look at windows to help you out,
Mhm.
because they're just too expensive.
Skylight.
it's also not
And
that,
they're gonna make you at least go double pane, if not triple pane,
Mhm.
yeah.
because that's what these guys want. Okay, so that, it helps with fire protection.
Before we go on, maybe we should ask for public comment because this is whole discussion. If you want to.
Siding throughout the entire building
Mhm.
needs to be replaced because it's all rotting on the bottom. Which means the sills around the building.
I'm writing
So,
these things down.
That's good,
'cause,
siding,
yeah.
Well, the
lighting,
venting
heating.
and all that stuff.
Windows, yeah, I think with windows, I guess, we're not climatically, it's a pretty mild climate, so you're not gonna lose a lot of heat in the wind from the windows, I wouldn't think. Like you wouldn't say if it was colder.
Right, and then
Yeah.
if you get better blinds,
Yeah.
okay, you can actually. help
Upgrade,
out with that.
upgrade.
Upgrade the blinds, so you don't have to have a
Oh, that's
wizard to
pocket
use them,
change.
right? Yeah, so that, yeah, and, now the roof, we still need to do an entire roof, re-roof. Wasn't that section of it done? Or am I
I think
thinking
it was
something else?
done over the Legion.
Right,
Over the Legion, yeah.
right, but it doesn't look that old to me. I'd like to know when was the last time it was done,
Mhm.
because,
Does it leak?
I don't,
this roof, I don't think this roof has any problems. It's
It
the
leaks?
back roofs that leak a little
Yeah.
bit. Have had-
Okay,
have had
so-
problems.
The kitchen improvements, I know, what the relevance there is that, if we had a commercial grade kitchen,
Yes,
you could have people cooking here for events, a lot more, and just, rather than just heating food up. Jocelyn Center has one of those kitchens, that's one of their,
Sales point.
advantages, yeah.
so the route, Haley just.
Yeah.
Cause she can find anything, was replaced in 2008.
Oh, good, 30 years.
Wait, 30-year, roof,
Usually they're 30 years.
30 or 40.
yeah.
Yeah,
So maybe the re-roofing, just another thing, maybe we don't need to do the re-roofing.
maybe it's just the. yeah,
Flooring needs major,
Sanding.
yeah,
work, yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
And like you said, some
part.
parts are rotting and.
Yeah, I mean, it's worse than that. Something needs to be replaced, I
Oh,
think.
well, just go for it.
The kitchen improvements, electrical emergency, 80,000, is that,
I don't know, is that a generator, Matt? Do you know?
Yes, that was a generator.
Generator.
and that still needs to be done. Sewer line,
Well, there's the electrical in this place is a disaster. Okay,
Has it been red tagged?
that needs to be, yes, it should be red tagged.
Okay.
Dealt with the electrical nightmare here.
Yeah, it's terrible. So when you're taking out, these ceiling and all that kind of stuff, you do the HVAC replacement at the same time because you got it open, and you also do the electrical at the same time because you got.
And the sealant, like Cheryl mentioned, I mean, it's probably a lot of asbestos remediation when we talk about getting into these walls and.
So you're talking about numerous heating
It's a little
zones,
more
okay?
expensive.
Yeah, but
I mean, I don't know.
asbestos, remediation is a lot cheaper than it used to be.
Okay.
It used to be really expensive.
Mhm.
It's
Never
awesome.
do it, but now, they decided that you don't have to be an astronaut to come in and take care of it, you could actually.
I just remember at Cal Poly,
Really?
anytime we touched anything, it was
Yes.
like a very big,
Even
ordeal.
the filters.
yeah.
Fear factor. They
Yeah.
made, a lot of people made a lot of money on that.
Yes,
So Dave, where are we at with, as far as trying to secure this as an emergency building? Do we need
I
to
don't think
provide
anybody-
some incentive to push that direction?
I don't think anybody's ever looked at it, and it would take a structural consultant, number one, and then at least an electrical consultant to look at what would need to be done to upgrade the building.
So you need
make
to
it-
do that before you can apply for grant money to turn it
Yeah,
into.
because they'd have to come up with an
Numbers.
estimate.
Yeah.
And then that would be the basis of the grant application. And then this could then be used, to house people and feed people.
The Red Cross
if-
Center.
because if there's a bad earthquake and Route 1 is
Or a fire.
gone, or a fire, this place could be a place to feed a lot of people if you had, a storage
Right.
set aside that you rotated in and out and all that kind of stuff.
But
So who
right now
needs-
it's the junior high, isn't it?
and there isn't anything
It was the junior high at one time.
I don't know if there's an official designated emergency place, could be other, you know, there's something
No, I don't think
that we're
there
talking
is.
about is
I don't
Red
think
Cross,
there is.
fire and all those guys, you know, yeah.
Hazard mitigation.
Yeah. It's-
So
yeah, you
there
def-
is no Red Cross?
As of now, we determine that, so
You do.
it all depends on that situation where, you know, like during the floods, I wouldn't have determined this place being the safe spot, it was the church where we set up.
The Catholic
command,
Church.
Right, for a fire, this would be a perfect spot, potentially,
Mhm.
but we would, you know.
So,
Yeah.
and that, of course, is,
This building is probably pretty defensible if it was upgraded enough so that it didn't catch fire.
question, yeah, question, Michael, so if you see the need to, have a place for shelter, you could still use the vets hall.
Absolutely.
You know, it doesn't have to have the official
Yeah,
designation.
yeah, so
Yeah.
like, in an incident where, say, a fire breaks off, I'm calling in resources. We've used this area for staging
Mhm.
for equipment.
Right.
You know, any big parking lot where it could be a
Mhm, yeah.
school or whatnot, so we could determine that as it.
Yeah.
As it comes.
Right, but I'm looking for money.
Yeah. The question is, I guess, would we get more, could we get a grant that would cover what we need to do already?
Right.
And, you know, or we just have to do all this stuff to be able to get the grant in a way.
It'd be interesting
Yeah.
to find out how Cayuga's got the grant.
They got county money, didn't they?
The county got them the money,
Well,
Yeah,
ask
the county got
Bruce.
them the money.
because guess who lives there? Anyway.
Yeah, that's,
Ask Bruce.
I don't know, I don't wanna, I think I want to sort of, well, close this out with sort of some direction.
Can I just ask a quick
Yeah.
question about the grant, right?
Yeah.
David,
Yeah.
the grant opportunities? From what your experience is, what I'm hearing you say is that you would almost be better off to go for a bigger, more holistic project as far as grant money is concerned than these, like, oh, I wanna do the kitchen, I
Yeah,
wanna do this, I wanna do
I
that.
think,
A more holistic,
depending upon what the consultants say about earthquake loans.
okay,
If.
we can
because
attach it
the
to
guy-
something
the
like
structural
safety
engineer may
or
walk in
fire
and start
prevention.
laughing, saying there's not a prayer you could do it, you'd have to tear the place down and
Mhm.
restart.
It might not be bad.
And, no, that might not be bad, but,
What's our insurance coverage?
uh,
I'm from New Jersey, I always ask that question.
so.
Yeah.
It might be worthwhile to pay a consultant $5,000 to come in and look at it and see what it says, but I mean, it was trucked here and put back together again, so I can't believe it, it's gonna pass, but could certain things be done with $500,000 or $1 million and then get another million
To help
to fix, you know.
Yeah.
To do the rest of it. They end up asking FEMA for $3 million. You know, you might be able to get that.
Yeah, so maybe that's something we can, I guess this is not, these are not formal recommendations, but, staff is listening.
Mhm.
Mr. McElhenney's still there, I'm sure. Or he might be,
I'm
sorry, yeah.
I'm
They're
still here.
listening. Yeah, we're listening. Staff is listening. I think the idea is bubbling up is to have a, someone come in, and if we're gonna pursue the idea of any sort of large grant, just to give a quick take on the structural, condition of this building, if it's even worth, you know, considering for some kind of emergency center. That's a possible next step.
And also possibly talking to somebody down at Cayugas, you know, what,
Well, finally, well,
What's
talk to
that thing?
our supervisor, Bruce Gibson, because that,
that's right.
it came from the county, yeah, because and he does live there, got ties to Cayugas. But they got a lot of money for that vets hall, a few years ago, which was, I think, structures loan, which is unlikely to be paid back.
Mm.
Essentially, it was a very favorable loan from the county, as I understand it, like $3 million. And again, I don't know where that money came from, where the county, where they found it in their, you know,
Under a
nooks and
rock.
crannies there, yeah, I mean, but, it would be something that the county certainly could be, you know,
You'd have
contact.
to have it now because they're $10 million in the hole.
Yeah, I mean, they're, that seems constantly in trouble. So I don't know if anybody else, Kayla and Michael, do you have anything else you wanted to add? Okay, so I think if we could sum up where we're going with this, I do think, again, this is, I mean, I don't know, go back to Denise, I guess, if Denise could handle this and staff, come back with maybe an updated list, but also,
Yeah.
updated list with priorities and also, but also, you know, look at the, you know, and then David, I guess, is doing the numbers, right?
In conjunction with
Yeah, and just
Matt.
with
And
Matt and
so
you,
I
yeah.
put it on here to have it for,
Yeah.
January's finance
Yeah, okay,
committee.
that work for everybody? Good, so we'll have some more clarity.
Is there anything more we need to do to kind of push this rock uphill a little bit further? To explore the possibilities of to converting that? Is there anything, do we need to have a motion to push something to the,
Discussion.
Uh,
is there anything more? That's what my
Yeah,
question
she
is.
said she's coming back in
I think this is again, I think coming back on January, the January meeting with a more specific list. And maybe at that point, there might be the, and good staff report can, you know, framed in a way that would say this, to make a recommendation to the board, not just to update the CIP list, but perhaps to seek a consultant or whatever, to initiate the process of trying to get an emergency, you know, a grant for converting the vets hall to an emergency center or something like that. I mean, that could be put in but we need we kind of need the
Some real numbers.
the numbers, yeah, and to be updated, which is, okay, first
And
item of
what's
business.
required for that?
Yeah.
That's the
And
thing.
that might mean, you know, having a structural engineer come look at it. Yeah, I don't know if you all know the story of the vets hall. It was World War II era building on Camp Roberts.
How many buildings is this?
I don't know how it was, but they were moved here.
Yeah, it makes
And,
sense.
and it was moved here after the war, and it initially was gonna be a youth center. It was, I guess, a youth center. Now, this was what became the Veterans Memorial Hall was initially a youth center, and I think in the
That's correct, you're
fifties.
right, you're right.
In the
you're right,
50s, it
you're
was,
right.
in agreement with the American Legion, it was redesignated, and I think the county initially had it.
Isn't it on the wall?
This is way before the CCSD existed, so the
Yeah,
county
I
had it.
think it's on the wall out there. Isn't
Yeah.
there history out there?
There's a history, yeah, but it was taken and trucked over here and reassembled. And it may not have been a particularly, long-term building anyway, you know,
Modular.
you know,
The World War II.
yeah, so that was where it came from.
Yeah.
Anyway,
The stairs and all that was repaired last year.
Might be a historical building. We can get some funding for that.
the county, basically, the county, I think, considers anything over 50 years old potentially historical. If it's, if it has some interest to it.
So
I'm interested.
are
Yeah,
you-
any more discussion on this or any more final thoughts?
can we move for items for next month?
Oh, I think the,
Future agenda items?
Yes.
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's the last thing on our agenda, yeah. I think if we're done with this item, I will move the future agenda items.
Yes.
Which, point, if you have any,
I have a couple things.
Yeah.
On my mind, phone. Can we get the street lights maybe subbed out on Main Street? Is there a lighting company that will come in periodically? And because it appears that David's he's got a lot of things going on, and there's question about street lighting that isn't. So is that possible
in other
to
words,
get?
maintenance, our maintenance of the streetlights, we're responsible for maintaining to contract
Can-
out.
Can we get it subbed out? So people
Uh,
don't write on social media that there's 5 lights out? I mean, that's
well, I mean,
liability.
yeah, Mr.
That's
Mac- yeah,
that's
Mr. Mac-
liability
yeah.
right there.
Before getting to the discussion of it, do you have any thoughts on that?
He's
Oh,
gonna
well,
Without getting discussion on it, yeah.
Yeah, I won't get into discussion, but it's the same concept of money that we just had a conversation about 20 minutes ago. You
Yeah,
know,
but this is
there's
liability.
sure, but it's the same budget that's restrained in F and R as it is with the floor that you're sitting on. So, I mean, we can keep looking at these options for facilities and resources improvements, but it's a budgetary issue. But we'll definitely look at it, and I'll work with David, and we can look at future budgets. But it's the same revenue constraints with F and R with lighting as it is the heating, as it is the floors, as it is the windows. But we'll take a look at it.
And thank you. Any other, yet another
Yeah,
one?
I do. Can, okay. I'm just gonna say it.
Go ahead.
Please.
Sure, go ahead.
Can we suspend collecting fees for the water wait list until something is done with that project out there, until they're moving forward? I mean, people are paying, we hear about it all the time.
Hmm.
Can they be suspended? Not for a short period of time? Okay. I've said
Well,
my
well,
piece.
that's, of course, we hear that a lot in communications to the committee and the board. That question comes up, and we are actually,
Addressing it.
well,
Talking about it.
we're doing a reexamination of all our fees. And again, Mr. McElhenney can chime in here, all our fee structure, including those fees, which I think are $88 a year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
The question, of course, is always gonna be, if we can justify those fees as for, based on the paper we could do every year to keep the list going and keep the list updated and so forth. And, to be blunt about it, whether we need the money.
Oh, God.
It goes into water, right? It goes into the water fund. So it's, again, it's all about all fees. It's all fees. That is the question. And you just basically do certain things for free. And it's great and certain people like that, but then you pay, there's a cost to it. So that's always the question.
It's on the fee schedule, that would be a board item.
And it is a board item.
Yeah, well,
So it's an enterprise fund, so if it was waived, it'd have to be made up.
I just said to
through
suspend
other
it.
fees.
Yeah.
I didn't say permanent.
Well, I mean,
but, you know,
suspension means, I'm not arguing. We don't want to, again, I shouldn't do discussion.
Okay,
It is, I think this is something, I will say, as opposed to having it at the committee, it is part of a fee update that staff and our consultant and Barbara Wells is working on now. Is this general fee structure update that will come to the board. It might come to, I don't know if it'll come to finance first. It's not quite done yet,
okay,
but it will come to the board. It's a board decision. So maybe we should just let that process
okay.
play
Well,
out.
I just said what I wanted to say.
Well, I appreciate that.
But we won't see it though prior to the board meeting.
I don't know. I mean, okay, I'm looking, I don't know. We might, I mean, I think, it could go through finance committee. It's kind of the board's decision, it's the board decision. I mean, I think there's a lot of fees on there that are pretty significant, especially the, what's called the capacity fee, which is when there are new connections, the water and sewer funds, the water and wastewater funds get sizable amount of money for a new connection. When it's like $20,000 overall
Mhm.
between the two of them. But that hasn't been updated since 2013, and that's part of the update. And that's significant. They will get some discussion. So at the board level. And of course, there's all sorts of issues surrounding that you might imagine.
Yeah.
But that's coming up. That's all already in the works. So it'll be the decision of the board and the chairman as to whether it goes to finance.
Would make sense to go to finance.
I think the whole fee structure, finance can look at it and say, does this make sense? I mean, it's not an, out of the ordinary thing to have happen, and just hasn't been done for many years.
Ages.
Yeah.
We could definitely do a couple different things in terms of bringing forward, when those fee updates are are ready, we can bring it through finance. If the finance committee wanted to agendize a discussion topic of suspending waitlist fees, we could do that as well. My interpretation is, once that gets to the board, there'll be a more robust discussion. And I don't think that would be likely to occur, but that'd be a board decision. We also can bring in Jim and Denise, and we can give a little presentation on why those waitlist fees and how they're used and why they're important to maintain that list. But that's a deeper discussion. But if that was to be chosen to be discussed at finance, we'd be ready.
Yeah. To me, I mean, just offhand, it makes more sense to have the whole updated fee schedule presented to finance for examination. And of course, the any one of those fee categories can be discussed by the board, I mean, by the committee and assessed, and we can recommend, committee can recommend, cut this, increase that.
Yeah.
You know, so I would just wait on that one until the work is done by the consultant and the revised fee schedule is, you know, drafted. And then go to finance, and then to the board. That would make the most sense, because if otherwise it agendize the whole list for the committee on the way to the board.
Because you'd have to have the replacement fee as well. What's taking?
You'll have all
place?
sorts, you have
You'd to
everything.
take
You have the
the whole-
vet hall fees.
Right.
You have the vet hall fees too. The whole works.
Good, thank you.
Okay, so we'll just, any other future agenda items?
I said my piece.
No, actually, you got a good discussion going. Well, it is 11:26, I believe. No further discussion, questions, comments, hereby adjourn this meeting.